Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for coming. I know it's a nice spring day. My name is Mark Gibney. I'm in the political science department. I've also been called Ben's surrogate father. So today I'll be Ben's surrogate father here. His real dad in the back here is Ken Betzalel, and Ken will actually close the program. So I'll speak a little bit. Ben will talk and give his presentation, Flight from Ukraine, and then Ken will talk. And what he will also talk about is something he's arranged for this evening. Dr. Jordan Kuck from Brevard College, who's a specialist on East European history, will be presenting the title here, From Frozen Conflict to Full-Scale War, explaining the origins of the war in Ukraine. That will be at Highsmith, 225 at 7 p.m. So this is sort of your Ukraine day, but it's a little bit hard to escape anyway, isn't it? Also, after Ben's presentation, we'll have questions and answers because this is being recorded. If you could step up to the microphone, as it were, and ask whatever questions that you might have here. And finally, by introduction here, I wanted to thank 4 people here. I want to thank, because this was thrown together very quickly. I want to thank Kent and Chris and Jessica and also Silke, who got us a room very quickly here to kind of put this thing together. So let me say a few things about Ben. So he's a lifelong Asheville resident, or almost lifelong. Grew up here, graduated from this university, played soccer, was a goalie on the soccer team. His parents here, so we have Sally Godini, we have John Stevens, we have Ken Betzalel and Heidi Kelly. I try to compute how many years they have been working here at UNCA, and I count at least 100. Right? And no, it's at least 100, and I think both Ken and Heidi continue to work here. Ben is like the mayor of Asheville. If you walk downtown with him, everybody knows him, right? Everybody knows him. It's like he's like a famous politician. No, he's too scruffy to be a famous politician. Let's say a rock star. He's sort of a rock and roll star kind of thing, but everyone seems to know him. My own relation with him was through tennis. That Ben and I, for a number of years, would play tennis. Ben had a studio, the Bull and Beggar restaurant. For those of you who've been around here for a while, the Bull and Beggar restaurant was Ben's studio. So we'd play tennis, go to the Wedge, go to a studio, have a beer, food truck, and being in his studio was magnificent. I mean, I think this guy's artwork is off the charts. I think it's absolutely phenomenal. So just to hang out there was a joy. I mean, it really was. And then Ben makes a trip to Senegal, and he meets Angelique, and everything changes. He falls madly in love with her, and if you met her, you would understand why. So he then begins to follow her. Right? They get married, and then he follows her. So he's closing the studio. And what I remember about that evening that he's going to close the studio is that an hour before the show was to begin, none of these paintings have a price tag. And so I go around with Ben, and I'm pricing these things, and I assure you I am uniquely unqualified to appraise art. I'd say $2,018. Okay, write that down and we'll be asking for that here. A question I'm sometimes asked is, are you a friend of Ben? Is Ben a friend of mine? The answer to that is no, that Ben is not a friend of mine. And the reason for that is a friend would let another friend win in tennis every once in a while, right? A friend would not beat you like a drum and then announce to the world, I have beaten you 197 times in a row. No friend. With friends like that, I think there's an expression, who needs enemies here? So finally, before we turn it over to Ben, let me talk about his journey. My field of expertise is international human rights. Very simple human rights, which is that it's this common humanity that we have. I mean, that really is the basis of all human rights. I'm trying to think of a silver lining in the war in the Ukraine, and the only silver lining I can come up with is this, is that what has shocked me, pleasantly shocked me, has been the response of the international community, where suddenly the suffering of other people becomes our suffering as well. How long it will last will apply to other situations. That remains to be seen. But if there's a silver lining here to the war in Ukraine, I believe it's that. Ben's art is about connecting people. You'll see. His art here, the events where he's either doing a happening in a refugee camp in Central African Republic, working with prisoners in Colombia, the event itself is a happening, right? It's a happening here. So let me turn this over to, yes, my dear friend and my son, okay, Ben Bezalel. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, for that generous introduction. Thank you all for being here in this room and around the world, wherever you are. I'd also quickly like to thank the community here in Asheville, in the United States in general as well, in New York and Washington, D.C., friends and family who have welcomed me so well, and my kids. And, we couldn't have done it without you guys. I'd also like to thank all the people who are in the world right now working to help affected populations and for the heroic work they do. So thank you. I thought it might be nice to try and write a sweet song. But then I looked into the mirror and followed the darkness all the way down. And I couldn't help but wonder if you'd ever done the same. I couldn't help but wonder what it might take to change. And I wondered what you might say if I came back to town. And I know sometimes we all open up our mouths, no idea of what's about to come out, how it will sound, if we're deaf or hip to what's going down. But wherever I am, and whatever I do, a part of me is with you, trying to find the good in goodbye and trying to write some kind of a sweet song. The first time I ever shared that poem with someone was in a bar in Kyiv, a friend of mine named Aaron. We had been introduced because he is from Ethiopia, and Angelique and I lived in Ethiopia in 2012 and 13, and we happened to live in the same place, Mekelle, that his family is now living in, and he had also lived in. So we knew some of the same people and would talk about restaurants that were no longer there, no longer open. There's been a civil war in Ethiopia, which Mekelle was the epicenter of. And we would get together and talk about that. And to think that several months later, going from talking about the idea of being a refugee and all of that goes along with it, and the pain and the uncertainty and the frustration and the lack of connection that can come, the isolation, to think that I've been talking with others for many years now about such situations and now find myself better understanding through personal experience what they have also gone through. So several months ago, I was living a quite normal life, according to me at least, in Kyiv. My wife and I, we were working. The kids were in school. I was working on a project, a new portrait project, in my studio, which was just down the street from the Maidan Square. And the project was called Trust, using portraiture to connect with people to build a bridge of trust and to help others understand what they have gone through. And before, obviously, that exhibition could take place, we've had to flee. This is a portrait of a friend who's also an IDP, Evgeny. He's right now studying here in America Soviet studies, and we talked at length about his experience being internally displaced by conflict. Several weeks, or at the end of January rather, it became clear that it might be a good idea to take out some of my paintings that I've been creating and gathering over the last 10 years abroad. And so I flew to Paris, quick 24-hour trip, just to depose 10 rolls of paintings and keep them safe should the worst indeed happen. A friend of Angelique's and mine picked us up from the airport. I couldn't believe the rolls fit in her car, but they did. And I came back to Kyiv. At that moment, Americans were being told to leave. Many family members from our children's school were leaving. Ukraine was surrounded. This is the last moments in my studio before leaving. It was on a Friday night that we had been told that we needed to get a plane ticket to leave, the kids and I, while Angelique would remain and work. And on the Sunday night, we were going to leave Monday. A large insurance company for the airlines had decided they were going to call Ukraine a no-fly zone. But Zelensky, President Zelensky, ponied up some money and put it in a pot and said, keep the flights going. And so thankfully, the next morning on the 14th or 15th, we flew. This is the last picture of Angelique and I with the kids outside of our apartment in Kyiv. We were tracking the flight as it came into Kiev, hoping it would land and we'd be able to get on it. Our backup plan was to go on a bus with the kids to Poland, but once we would get to that border, we had no idea what would happen there. So thankfully, we were able to board the flight. This is a look down at Kyiv, one last shot. Thankfully, we were also able to remain in contact with Angelique, the kids, and take news. But I'd like to stop there, and I'll circle back, but to give a little background about how I ended up in Kyiv and here before you tonight. As Mark said, I moved to Asheville. I was almost 10 years old in 1990, and made art, played soccer, was part of this community. I went away to art school for 1 year at Savannah College of Art and Design before coming back here to study drawing and painting. And this is a still from a project I did called Revisualizing the Humanities, Paintings in Response to the Poetry and Life of Nelly Sachs, who was a German-born poet who fled on the last flight from Berlin to Sweden, where she translated German poems into Swedish, looked at the death and rebirth of language, and the tensions. In my project, I focused on between being a German and a Jew and a survivor and a poet. This is an early work I made in high school that had won some awards. It's called Boy Looking Away. Without getting into the background of this piece, In particular, the idea was to make work that had some kind of a social commentary or purpose. After I graduated from UNCA in 2004, I had shows wherever I could, and in 2006 I had 2 exhibitions at the Wedge Gallery in the River Arts District, and by the end of the year I had been invited to move into the space and take it over by the late John Payne, who was a friend and mentor. And I was painting. Series of portraits that had a theme tying them together. It was not just about 1 painting or 2 paintings, but what a group of paintings could have us think about. This is a portrait I did of a friend named Zhenya, and we called this painting Soviet Boxer. I remember when I did this painting that I thought how interesting to be able to make a portrait of this cool Russian guy who's living here. 20 years ago, that wouldn't have been possible, perhaps. And as things shift and change beneath our feet, the same can be said now of that painting. It must be said that I feel a tremendous amount of empathy for people in any country, any boundary, that are forced into positions like many Russians are right now. This is a portrait of John Payne, who I mentioned earlier, a great sculptor and creative mind. This is the Wedge Gallery, some of my work. I began a series called The Weather or Not in 2007, looking at what we can and cannot control. Whether this happens, whether that happens. This is called New Old World. The previous one was called Rise and Fall. This one, Continental Shift. They're all quite large. This is maybe 6 feet wide. This one's called Shipwreck. Before I went to Senegal in 2008, at the invitation of a friend, I made these 2 next paintings. These are 5 by 6 feet. This one is called Origin of Heart. And this one is called Chains of Freedom. So in early 2008, I packed suitcases with supplies and went to Senegal on a one-way ticket. And there I began to experiment with what portrait painting can make happen. I first painted some of the people I was with before opening it to their families, to random people I would meet. This is a friend, Aisha, who is from Chad and had to leave Chad because of conflict and make a life in Senegal. This is a retired physics professor. And here is a portrait I did of Angelique, not upon our first meeting, but close. So I met Angelique in Senegal in 2008, and her stories and her life experience and her line of work were fascinating to me, as well as the other things. But from her I've witnessed secondhand at least, but many powerful stories that make you stop and think, and it is a similar direction that my work has been in an effort towards most of my adult life. So I came back to Asheville after this trip. This is a shot of the Wedge Gallery at that time. That's someone hanging from a trapeze, if you can't tell. There was a lot going on, but I was able to find some moments of quiet, usually in the middle of the night. And I began to realize and make up my mind that it was time to move on. So in the next years, I began a transition to living abroad full-time, traveling to different countries, Colombia, Sri Lanka. I spent time in Geneva. For my last exhibition in 2012 at the Wedge Gallery, I focused on doing a series of portraits of the new investors of the building. It was a tumultuous time, and I faced it just through meeting the humans behind the decisions and gossip. And from there, I moved to Mekelle, Ethiopia, where I did a lot of work, but because of a visa restriction, I was not able to technically work or even volunteer. And by the time we moved to Colombia in 2014, I was ready to go. The first project I ended up doing was in conjunction with a campaign to raise the awareness on the experiences of family members of missing persons due to the armed conflict. This means that my son, my mother, my brother, my friend disappears and we don't know what happened. And it's a painful line here, but the idea is that an open wound cannot heal, and that helping people have closure is a very important thing. And so I began meeting with family members of missing persons, painting their portraits, listening to their stories, selecting an object of importance from their life that could be shown together with the painting, the writing, in an exhibition. I'd like to stop here and quickly just read an example of one of those narratives. The painting here you see is called Mother of Edgar Byron, missing since July 10th, 1999. My son, Edgar Byron, liked to draw. Once he won an award for his artwork at 17. He enrolled for the police academy to help support our family. But he never lost his interest in drawing. He worked for the police for several years before he was captured. For 3 months, we did not know if he was alive. And then one day, out of the blue, we received a proof of life photograph. After that, he began to send us letters and drawings so that we would know he was all right. But in 2002, the letters stopped. He once visited me in a dream. Edgar Byron told me that when all of our family was together again, he would return. And even to this day, I feel him watching over our family. The most difficult decision I've ever had to make in my life was when I finally decided to take the money from the government in compensation for his service, to choose money over the hope that my son was alive. One of the successes of that project was in the exhibition, all of the visitors were reading every word on the wall. And I thought to myself, this is a powerful mode of communication. And I set about doing another series and another exhibition. For the next project, also in Colombia, I worked inside prisons across the country, teaching self-portrait workshops in the morning, and in the afternoon doing a portrait happening with either a detainee or a family member of the detainee living on the outside. The project was called Humanos adentro y fuera. Here are some of the portraits from this project. One of the things that struck me was that when someone is inside, it's a double sentence. Their family on the outside also suffering their absence. This was the young mother whose own family, her own parents, had troubles with the law and were not around to raise her. And in her early 20s, she began a relationship with a guy who ended also up in prison. She went to meet him inside. He asked her to do one favor for her. And next thing you know, she's pregnant inside prison as well, her child growing up just as she did. But her lessons were powerful to me. She said that inside it's just like outside. And you find a community, and you find friends to talk to, and you make it day by day. For the exhibition of this project, we were able to gain access to the Museo Nacional in Bogota, which some 50 years before was a prison. And so we used some of the architectural elements in the space, in the exhibition. And then in 2018, I began another project, this time from Senegal. I flew to Central African Republic and Chad to conduct situational portrait happenings with people internally displaced from conflict there. And so I will quickly play this short video from that project.
Here we go, we're going to the airport.
There are over 1.3 million people internally displaced from conflict.
Coming into a village that had no idea we were coming. You know, they had no warning, they had no idea what was going to happen. You feel really lost at first, but conversation by conversation, moment by moment, and especially when I get out the notebook, start writing notes, and then start the painting, that's when everything changes. So it seemed like it went well, and there was a lot of laughter, which I think is a nice part of it. We've seen a lot, and you know, it's not easy to see these things. All I hope is that, you know, you see this and it makes you feel something, even for a minute, and that you consider that this could be you. When I see that, it inspires me to be a better man, to be a better husband and brother and son.
So also from Senegal at this time, in now 2019, I began traveling down to Gambia, which had been under the dictatorship of Yahya Jammeh for 22 years, and in 2017 had had a democratic election, and the people chose Adama Barrow. And there was some turbulence, but eventually Barrow took power, and I began going down and using portraiture as a catalyst for dialogue and learning about what they had lived through, what their thoughts on it were. And this project took place at the same time, reading the news back here in the States with what was going on in our own political sphere, inching towards dictatorship. But before I could truly finish this project, we flew to Kyiv. It was a strange beginning. We were shuttled in under the quarantine just before everything closed. I spent around 3 months in a tiny apartment. Didn't really know anybody, was with the kids, living something quite different than what I had been doing before. And bit by bit, I began meeting people, meeting artists, all sorts of different folks, and began creating a new project, as I mentioned before. And this is the group of people I was going to be working on that with at the Shevchenko Museum, a series of portraits called Trust. But life was very normal. 10 minutes away from our apartment was the stadium. We were lucky to go see France play Ukraine. 1-1 draw. And to think that this is what the streets look like now does break my heart. Such good friends, their lives have been upended. This is Victor and Katya, some of the first people I met in Kyiv. He's a tech entrepreneur, startups, and she's a graphic designer, and they work for different companies and projects all over the world. I just spoke to him today, and they're not leaving. Despite all the destruction. As I mentioned at the beginning, my friend Aaron from Ethiopia is here with his other colleagues from the UN system and WHO. He sent me the Monday that the kids and I flew. It was a Monday night soccer group. That's probably how I hurt my knee. There is no playing now. This is another good friend of mine, Taras, an excellent tennis player. He was pro and is now a tennis coach. And this is him to the right of the screen in tactical gear. I have battled with him across the tennis court. I have never seen him this tired. This is another friend of mine, Daria. She's an artist, a painter. She makes mosaics. She uses different objects, but in this piece, in this series, she used bullet casings. I think we can recognize who this portrait is of. And for her work, she was threatened, and after some time decided it was not safe to stay in Ukraine, and she began traveling around the world. And in Mexico, she was poisoned, and the young doctor, medical student, who was at her bedside and helping her recover, wound up forming a bond with her. They began to travel. They got married. They had a baby. And it's very difficult to think about what they're going through right now as well. Having to put on a strong face. So Angelique spent the first days of the conflict in Kyiv. I was going to bed one night, preparing for bed. It was around 11:30 or so, and I got a message from her. 2 explosions. Another message. Have talked with teams all over the country. They heard them too. It was a terrifying moment to live for me, but I can't even imagine the stress and tension and fear and exhaustion that people there must be going through now. This is her in the bunker at the end of the day with a colleague. These are some of my friends in Kyiv who I sometimes play music with, playing in a bunker, trying to keep their spirits high, despite not being able to leave and see the sunshine for up to 5 days. This is our family car, now in service of the International Committee of the Red Cross. Thankfully, after several days in the bunker in Kyiv, they were able to join a convoy and escape. This is our bobbly head dog. This is another picture she sent me, which I find quite haunting. This is the convoy getting ready to take people away from hot conflict zones and cities that are surrounded. The ICRC is working on a number of fronts. They're negotiating humanitarian corridors. They're working to protect civilian populations, visiting detainees, restoring family links, and working to manage the exchange of dead bodies. This is from a distribution. These people are risking everything to help others. And I'd like to end my remarks today with another poem. Life, it comes like a kick in the head. Suffering, pain, feelings of joy. And I am unarmed, stepping back out onto this road, on a journey that is long, without an image to match the sun. Try and look away, but it's in everything I lay my eyes upon. And I am unarmed, unarmed, asking when this wait will end. And then a song somehow arrives. No one knows it comes from where, travels through the wind, through the leaves, through your hair. And I am unarmed, unarmed, saying things that rivers will. And into waters that are fresh will we wake with fetid breath. Is this all a dream, or is this unjust as it does seem? I am unarmed, unarmed, reaching out my hand. Together, here and now, through the song in sirens past, a solemn trumpet blows. None of this will last. And I am unarmed, unarmed, wrestling this heavy page to turn. Thank you. So if anyone has any questions, that's okay if you don't. I'm here to answer them. But I want to thank again everybody for being here, for Mark for setting this up. I see many of you in the audience and hold many of you out there in the world who may be listening in my mind and heart. And that's a wrap.
All right, if there are no questions, or if you want to come and talk to Ben on the side, by all means do so. But I can, if you would come up here, because I wanted to, Ben's real father, not the surrogate one. The surrogate one is a weak substitute, but the real father here has something. Ken, do you need a hand?
No.
Okay. So Ben, your dad's got something for you.
We decided to frame. Having a son as an artist is not always the easiest thing. Very independent, strong-willed, but that's what it takes to be an artist. He goes his own way.
I'm looking at that microphone.
That's it. You can hear me. And I think this is also really an occasion to thank my colleagues here at UNCA, who are really a surrogate family. Folks in the humanities program, the art department, political science, other departments, have really educated not Ben, but all the students that go to the UNCA. It's an incredible faculty that really cares about people. And where is that? Here. We have this series. Honestly, it's too heavy for me to carry them all. But I wanted to share this with you. It's just framed over at Blackbird Framing, and it's an incredible framing shop.
But what is this, again? This is an early painting?
This is from the Nellie Sachs series that Ben should be holding in the middle.
Should I? All right.
It's his work. He did it as an undergraduate. I think Robert Dunning was his faculty advisor, and Elizabeth Schneider in the German department, and Linda Cornett you have also in international relations, international studies.
War, peace, and world politics.
War, peace, and yeah. And so, he had so many faculty people here. Ben decided to go here, because he wanted to study art. He also wanted to play soccer, and those seemed like just two very, very different things. Ben, I think this is true, broke many of his fingers playing soccer, but I think that in some way contributed to his artistic style. He's taken everything that comes at him, and it hasn't been easy. I haven't been the easiest of fathers, because I'm always saying, Ben, when are you going to get a job? We come from a long family of artists, and the mythology in our family is that we could never really afford to be artists. And so we were so proud of Ben when he decided to study art and really make it a life career. But it's a tough road to go. It's not easy. It may look easy when it's condensed, but there's a lot of struggle in it. He's got a wonderful family, beautiful family. Our daughter-in-law is just an amazing person. Grandchildren are terrific. So we're really lucky. And we're also lucky to be part of this UNCA family, which is an incredible group of people, and this audience is really amazing. So that's all I've got to say. There is a talk tonight by a wonderful scholar from Brevard College is coming. So if you can make it, I think it would complement this talk very nicely. It's a historical look at the forces that brought us to this situation in Ukraine. And I think it would be valuable to hear. That's at 7 o'clock. It'll be at the Heisman Center. It's on the UNCA webpage. Thanks for coming, Ben.
Yeah.
Ben.